on FM 98.1, AM 1230 KWSN, and KWSN.com. The Kurtiss Riggs Show being brought to you by Sioux Falls Specialty Hospital and by Orthopedic Institute. Now, here's your host of the Kurtiss Riggs Show, the voice of the Sioux Falls Storm, Rich Roste.
And good afternoon and hi, everybody. I'm Rich Roste, and welcome to the Kurtiss Riggs Show. And coming up on the show, we'll be talking to the Storm head coach, Kurtiss Riggs. We'll be talking about the games in the IFL, and things are getting very interesting. You'll find out about that. A big game yesterday down in Phoenix we're going to be talking about for quite a while. Then we're also going to be talking about the Storm's win last Friday over the Cedar Rapids Titans, 56-45. And then also on the show will be new wide receiver Damian Ford and defensive coordinator Brian Hermanson. Now, this week the Storm has a bye, and then next week the Storm will be traveling up to Green Bay to take on the Blizzard. That's going to be a Friday game, June 1st, in Green Bay, and that's going to be on our sister station. And the rest of the season, the Storm games will be on Kelo News Talk, 1320 and FM 107.9. And but then on our final segment of the Kurtiss Riggs Show, we'll talk to the coach about how he's game planning, formulating the final three games of the season, as far as individually, collectively, just how he kind of looks at the remainder of the season, because it's going to be very interesting. Now, the Kurtiss Riggs Show is proudly presented each week by the official Storm sports medicine providers, Sioux Falls Specialty Hospital, the Sioux Falls Storm official healthcare team, and the only 5-star rated hospital in Sioux Falls, and by Orthopedic Institute, the one to trust. So coming up next, the Storm head coach, Kurtiss Riggs, and you're listening to it right here on KWSN.
You know, texting while driving is dangerous.
The biggest difference in Boyer and other truck dealerships is the fact that we're an employee-owned company. From the front of the building with the sales to the back of the building with service and parts, you're dealing with the owner of the company. We have the smallest vehicles all the way up to the biggest vehicles. We're a truck dealer by heart, and by design, we deal in the whole gamut of the vehicles. There's not a lot of dealers that do that. This is a relationship business, and I enjoy the relationships a lot.
If you like to bowl, roll on into Eastway Bowl. Hey, wait a minute. Eastway Bowl is more than just bowling. It's a full of fun entertainment center. There's many things to do. Games, and more games, plus food. Great food. Come into our full-service sports bar and grill, where you'll find terrific drinks with our popular late-night specials. Watch all your favorite sporting events at Eastway. Visit our website to make your bowling reservations and find out more about the full fun experience. Eastway Bowl and Entertainment Center, where there's something for everyone.
Brought to you by Sioux Falls Specialty Hospital and by Orthopedic Institute on 98.1, 1230 Sports Radio, KWSN. Back to the show. Here's Rich Roste.
And each week our opening interview with the Storm head coach, Kurtiss Riggs, is brought to you by the great folks over at Good Sense Deli Fresh Subs. Storm sponsors since day one, Good Sense Deli Fresh Subs. Come see what fresh really is, and they deliver anywhere in Sioux Falls, and their subs are just breader. And he is the head coach of the Sioux Falls Storm, Kurtiss Riggs. How you doing, Coach?
I'm okay, Rich. How are you?
Oh, it's great. It seems like it's been forever since we had that game down in Cedar Rapids. It was last Friday night.
It does. Having a full weekend is odd.
It's not too bad either.
Yeah, I agree with you.
Sioux Falls Storm won that game down in Cedar Rapids 56-45. We'll talk about that in more detail in the next segment. But there was two other games that went on during the course of this past weekend in the IFL. And both of them were very interesting and have a lot of interesting concepts about them. And one of those, the first game was Green Bay was at Wisconsin. Green Bay Green Bay was at Nebraska, and they defeated the Danger 31-20 to pick up their second win. And after that game was completed, at some point during the course of the weekend, the head coach of the Nebraska Danger, Mark Stout, was relieved of his duties. Anything else you know about that situation?
I think they're going co-head coaches with Pick Brown and Adam Shackelford. It's one of the tough things in this business.
Yeah.
His schemes work. I mean, he's proven that. But they beat Iowa, and then we went in there and beat them, and they haven't won since. And I'm sure, Charlie Bosselman is just, we got to do something, and we got to do something that shake this up and try to salvage this season and get into the playoffs. And, having the coaching staff he has probably felt like we could have other guys that can take over and hopefully try to motivate in a different way, and maybe guys will buy in and they can go on a little run here.
Well, one thing about it, the new coaches get to start off with an easy ball game. They're going to be taking on the Arizona Rattlers, who got beat over the weekend in overtime by Iowa, 69-68. So these new coaches at Nebraska, they get to go face a quite angry Arizona Rattler team down in Phoenix.
Yeah, and it's going to be at Arizona too. I think that's key because that was a tough loss for them yesterday, and you're right. I mean, they're going to be fired up, and every game is of the utmost importance for the top three teams. And so, no game is going to be taken lightly, and you can bet that Coach Guy is going to have them coming out playing very physical, very aggressive, and I would think their defense is going to come out with definitely a chip on their shoulder. Well,
during the course of the last weeks, the Arizona Rattlers have given up some major points. They gave up 83 points to Cedar Rapids, 68 to Iowa in this game yesterday, but in front of 18,000 fans, a new record for Arizona, new record for the IFL, 18,000 announced fans down at Phoenix, and they saw this game go in overtime against the Iowa Barnstormers. Iowa was behind the whole game, wound up tying it at the very end, and going into overtime, Iowa has the Rattlers have the ball first. They get a touchdown point after. Iowa gets the ball back. They score a touchdown and decide to go for two. And I watched that play unfold, and I'm sure you saw it. That was one tremendous drawn-up play that Iowa ran for that two-point conversion. Tell us about it.
Well, I think there's some things we should add in there. The where it got very interesting was when Arizona scores first, they kick the extra point. Iowa comes down on fourth down. It's 4th and goal from the 2, and they score. But you could see what Arizona's coaches were so fired up about. They felt like their nose guard got held. Mm-hmm. And Coach Guy's on the field as Iowa is setting up for the extra point to tie it and go into double overtime. And his assistants are coming out on the field telling him to throw the flag. And so he does. He throws the challenge flag. Well, you have to have a timeout to be able to challenge. And they didn't have a timeout. They used it in their first, when they had the ball, because you get one timeout per overtime.
Sure.
And he threw it, and you could then see Coach Guy's look after, because then you get a delay game penalty. They move it up half the distance, 2 yards. Now it's 2 yards to win the game, and that's what Iowa opted. The play, they ran the same play earlier in the game, and they ran it. It was really a good call by Coach Wooten, really a good call. But this one, Arizona didn't even get a guy out lined up on the receiver. So it's hard to say it was such a good call when Arizona just didn't even cover the guy. For some reason it was like they lost Roland, which I don't know how you can do. He was just standing out there all by himself, and Drew, who played outstanding. I mean, he really had I thought both quarterbacks played really, really well. I thought both O-lines and both quarterbacks played really well. In fact, at times I thought the game was like 7-on-7. Like there was no pass rush. I mean, the quarterbacks looked like they could just sit back there. But when they needed to, they both made plays. They both had nice games. So, yeah, it's probably one of the best games I've seen in a long time. I sat there and thought, these two teams are playing really good football right now. These are teams we can beat, but they're also teams I could see getting after us, too, if we don't come in and play great football.
Well, that's the bottom line about it. That's this time of the year you have to play your very best. The thing about that I liked about that two-point conversion, it was like Drew Powell got the snapshot and came almost towards the line of scrimmage and ducked down, then backed up and then threw to the end zone. It was like he really suckered those corners in, and I just thought it was executed very well, and they get the two-point conversion on the road to get the win in front of 18,000 people. And It takes a lot of guts, and it takes a lot of great players to be able to pull that off.
Yeah, Iowa played great football. There most definitely was not 18,000 fans at the game.
No,
that's for sure.
I just
but
said
yeah,
it.
like you said, it's probably seats. It's probably seats that were paid for, and it was a good crowd though, and they saw a great game, and they saw Iowa come in and play really, really good football. Very physical. They did a nice job. Arizona's without a couple key players though. You lose Bubba Chapman, who I think is their best defensive player, and then Monroe and Thurston, their top two running backs, not playing also. The Peebles kid is a good running back, but he's not a Monroe.
No.
And but it didn't matter because Arizona couldn't stop Iowa. Iowa scored every drive, and a lot of that's because Drew Powell played outstanding.
Drew Powell for the night, 19 of 21, 191 yards, 5 touchdowns, no interceptions. Ran the ball 18 times for 94 yards, had 4 rushing touchdowns. He accounted for 9 touchdowns for the Iowa Barnstormers. And on the other side, Jeff Ziemba, he was 22 of 27, 237 yards. He had 5 passing touchdowns, no interceptions. He rushed the ball 5 times, 35 yards, and he had 2 touchdowns. He accounted for 7. It was just a great football game. That's the way indoor football should be played. I think I'm going to have Brian Hermanson on the show a little bit later, and he will argue that point. As a defensive
that's one
coordinator.
we wouldn't want to see that, but the Siemba kid, you would think he would be offensive player of the week, but I mean Drew, those numbers are amazing and well deserved. He definitely carried them.
Well, you talked about every game being extremely important. We're going to take a little bit of extra time in this first segment and talk about that a little bit because every game is totally important. And right now, Arizona's 9-2, Iowa's 8-2, Sioux Falls is 8-3. And I contacted the league office and I asked them, what are the tiebreakers? And if this scenario would play out, and this is a big if, but if this scenario played out, it would be hugely interesting. If Arizona loses to Iowa again, because they play again, and if the Storm would win out, in other words, beat Iowa, there would be a 3-way tie for first place, with 3 teams 11-3 on the year. And the official tiebreakers are that it's a win-loss percentage. Okay, they're all 11-3. That's the same. Then it's head-to-head record versus the opponents involved with the tie. Now, if there are 3 teams in the tie, it goes until there's a dominant of one of them, and then the lowest one is eliminated. But it's like a round robin. Iowa has a definite advantage over Arizona. Arizona over the Storm with 2 wins. And if the Storm would beat Iowa, the Storm would have the tiebreaker over Iowa. So all 3 teams would have a dominance or a tiebreaker over the other. So then it would go to third place, the third percentage or the third tiebreaker, which is the opponent's win percentage. And the way the win percentage is today, and this will change by the end of the season, right now, Iowa has the toughest schedule, followed by Sioux Falls, followed by Arizona. So if we go to the third tiebreaker, because the second tiebreaker, head-to-head, all tied, there's the possibility Iowa would host, Sioux Falls would host Arizona, even though they would have the tiebreaker. I'm not sure about that totally, but it makes for a very interesting conversation, and every game totally important.
Yeah, it's definitely interesting. A lot of it comes down to scheduling. Arizona and us only played each other twice, whereas Iowa played us and Arizona 3 times each.
Right.
And that would be the difference for them over the other 2. And as last night after the game, I had people texting me asking, what are the tiebreakers? And I was like, hey, quit trying to even figure it out right now, because if you haven't noticed, every game for us is a battle. So Green Bay right now, we're trying to figure out how to beat Green Bay, and they went in and got another win, and And Corey Roberson's doing a great job. Their D-line played outstanding against Nebraska. They really got after that quarterback. And so, for us, we can't look past any. I don't think we are the team that can sit here and say, well, the Iowa game's the most important game, because that's just not the case for us. I mean, right now, Green Bay is the most important game for us.
Oh, absolutely. And absolutely. But it was just for comparison, just to let folks know exactly how.
Oh, it's fun. Yeah. You're right, Rich. I mean, and you're not the only one doing it. That's what I mean. Everyone's doing it. And it's fun to figure that out and plot it out, and then try to finagle a way that their team can get the advantage. But me as a coach, it's all Green Bay.
Well, Coach, we'll talk about the Cedar Rapids Titans. We'll talk about them for just a little bit in the next segment. But you're listening to this segment brought to you by Good Sense Deli Fresh Subs. Come see what fresh really is, and they deliver anywhere in town. Their subs are just breader, and you're listening to the Kurtiss Riggs Show right here on FM 98.1, AM 1230, Sports Radio, KWSN.
Hey, you there, in your car.
The Rostes wanted their new house to be unique, so they went back to Fireplace Pros. The upstairs is traditional, but the downstairs is very modern. They are delighted.
We wanted a different look and feel within our house, and Fireplace Pros, as always, helped us make it happen. They're the best.
Visit us on the web or stop by your nearest Heat and Glow or Heatilator dealer. Fireplace Pros, Heat and Glow, and Heatilator. You're going to love the way your home feels.
You're listening to the Kurtiss Riggs Show, brought to you by Sioux Falls Specialty Hospital and by Orthopedic Institute on 98.1, 1230, Sports Radio, KWSN. Back to the show. Here's Rich Roste.
And next Monday is Memorial Day, so next week the Kurtiss Riggs Show will be on Tuesday at 6 o'clock. Again, next week, Kurtiss Riggs Show on Tuesday because of Memorial Day on Monday. And the Storm Weekly Game Recap is brought to you by Eastway Bowl, the perfect spot for family fun. The Eastway Sports Lounge, the official Storm road game viewing party host for all Storm fans. And the next Storm away game viewing party is next Friday, next Friday, June 1st, as the Storm will be traveling to Green Bay to take on the Blizzard. And he is the head coach of the Sioux Falls Storm. You go down to Cedar Rapids, and first of all, it's just very different to have so few people in the audience. Probably maybe 200 people, and it just created an entirely different atmosphere, didn't it?
Yeah, it did, and so many of us that had been there when they really packed it in and talked about what an imposing, intimidating place it was to play in. It's really so different. I had a lot of people commenting. We could hear you, shouting out calls to Zoe, either on the broadcast or people at the game. And it's something they've never heard before, because usually most places it's quite a bit louder.
However, it was an interesting game down there, and I don't think I've been a part of a game where kicking was such a huge part of the outcome.
Yeah, I mean it really was, and finally, we've been waiting to get some blocks, and it paid off where the defense was able to get. I think we had 3 blocks in the game, but in the first half, we got one that led to a safety and another one that led to a touchdown, and really helped us out where we were struggling offensively that first half.
Yes, that's exactly right. And the third block was on an extra point, and that wound up being recovered and not carried back the other way for a 2-point conversion. But yes, Claude Davis had a block that wound up getting a touchdown. Stottero recovered that in the end zone, and Owen Williams had a block that wound up getting a safety. But also one of the biggest kicks was a kick off by Miles Bergner. They hit one of the up blockers that bounced right off of him, goes into the end zone, and Bergner recovers that, and the Storm get a touchback, get the ball back, wind up getting a score after that, and the Storm win by 11, and that was a big factor in that victory.
Yeah, that was huge. I mean, we were able to score, take the lead, but it was just going back and forth with the two offenses at that point. And to be able to get that one and then drive 45 yards down, and I don't think we threw a single pass. I think we just ran it right down their throat. And, it's really demoralizing, one, that you give that up, and then two, to have the team just rush it down the field, use the clock, and get the score, too.
You talk about rushing. Marquise Rogers had 20 carries, 111 yards. He had 2 rushing touchdowns. Great to have him back on the field for the Sioux Falls Storm.
Marquise really ran hard, and I think that was he really hits it downhill full speed and was able to hit the play side gap quite a bit. And we made the change early in the game, and had Lyle at a receiver, and you could just see that Marquise had those fresh legs, was really churning. He's not as much a lateral guy. He's not much for getting outside and then making a cut and still being full speed. But when he just gets going downhill and he absorbs a lot of hits and keeps falling forward and has a lot of deuce in him, Rolando Finch,
yes.
But doesn't quite have the size of Rolando, but has a little more speed. And he did an exceptional job. He really did a nice job coming in and giving us the burst that we desperately needed.
Storm win down in Cedar Rapids, 56-45. Any other positives or negatives that you got from that game, and other than the win itself, but any other things that you wanted to comment about that game?
Well, I thought a positive. I thought our defense played pretty well. I mean, that quarterback, he got after us last time we played them, and they really did a nice job. Now, they made some plays, and they kind of got hot a little bit in the second half. But most of the things they accomplished were things that we gave them. I mean, you've done a great job leaving out all the penalties in this game. I mean, that's a negative, I would say. And a lot of those penalties were self-inflicted ones. A long pass, we'd have a PI. I think we had 3 of those where it was 3rd and long, and they throw a long pass, and they get the pass interference call. And they were pass interference. Mm-hmm. And so we give them the ball, and I think 2 of them were in the end zone, so it's 1st and goal at the 2-yard line now. And you just put yourself in a corner and make it really tough on yourself when you help the offense on drives like that.
Or you pick up their mouth guard and throw it into the crowd.
Yeah, I mean, and that's a player that is one of the best for us. Mm-hmm. I mean, in every sense, professionalism, how he carries himself. And it was just so out of his nature, and he just grabbed it, threw it out, and I'm sure it's one afterwards. He's like, what was I doing?
Yeah.
But you're right. You do that, you give him another 15 yards, and we just had a lot of careless ones, and Cedar took advantage of them, and it helped them stay in the game.
And they also got a pick 6.
Yeah, they did, and that was twofold. That was a really bad route, and it was a really poor read. And the combination of the two, usually good things aren't going to happen. When you have the bad route and you have a poor read, and Mike, he tried to run outside and left a huge window for the DB to cut inside of him, and the DB made a nice play, and then Mike slipped down too, and Zoe threw, expecting Mike to be coming back, and he should have stayed with the play and the progression there, and he was trying to make a big play, and we paid for it. Boy, what a helpless feeling, though, standing in the end zone, just watching the DB run straight at me.
Uh-huh.
Just like, oh, good for you. I'm really happy you made that play. And, it was like you wanted me to give him 5. I'm just thinking, well, the next drive, here we go. We gotta score. We got to score and try to get this game in our control again.
At least you didn't Woody Hayes him.
Yeah. There was a coach, Sean Ponder, in AF2 that was coaching, and DB picked it off and is running by Ponder, and he trips him.
Oh, no.
And so they give him the touchdown, and then they ended up suspending him for the rest of the season. I mean, it was blatant. It was clear as day. But, it's hard as a coach. You're competitive, and you see these guys going, and I've found that more the frustration takes over, and trying to replay the play to think, why did we make this mistake here, more so than dwelling on the guy running by you celebrating.
Well, Coach, you get the win down at Cedar Rapids, and you are in a great position right now. 3 tough games coming up later on the broadcast. Rather than having a conversation about Green Bay coming up, I'm going to talk to you about how do you formulate in your mind playing this end of the season, concentrating game by game. However, there's still some things in the back of your mind I want to talk about.
Okay.
You bet, Rich. I look forward to it.
Okay, he is the head coach of the Sioux Falls Storm, Kurtiss Riggs, and the Storm recap brought to you by Eastway Lounge, and you can see the next Storm game Friday, June 1st, as the Storm will be traveling up to Green Bay to take on the Blizzard. Coming up next, new wide receiver with the Sioux Falls Storm, Damian Ford, and you're listening to the Kurtiss Riggs Show right here on FM 98.1, AM 1230, Sports Radio KWSN.
Your body is a complex arrangement of bone and tissue that requires only the best to maintain it. At Orthopedic Institute, that's our specialty. Our services have been specifically tailored to provide the best orthopedic care in the region. Orthopedics is what we do. That's why Orthopedic Institute is the one to trust to keep your body in motion.
You're listening to the Kurtiss Riggs Show, brought to you by Sioux Falls Specialty Hospital and by Orthopedic Institute on 98.1, 1230, Sports Radio, KWSN. Back to the show. Here's Rich Roste.
And this segment of the Kurtiss Riggs Show is the player interview, and it's brought to you by Lewis Pharmacies. Get in, get out, feel better. And after we take a break, third caller, 336-1234, free tickets to that game coming up on Friday, June 8th, when the Storm hosts the Iowa Barnstormers. And you're going to want to be there for that one. That's going to be a dandy. That's going to be an absolute dandy. Joining us via the fan line, new wide receiver with the Sioux Falls Storm, Damian Ford. Damian, thanks for being on the Kurtiss Riggs Show.
Thanks for having me.
Wanted to find out a little bit about you, introduce you to the Storm fans. Where did you grow up and where did you go to college?
I'm originally from Birmingham, Alabama, born and raised. And I played at a Division II school called Stillman College. It's in Tuscaloosa, Alabama.
Oh, Division II, very, very familiar with that around here. Division II is a big part of the culture of college here for many years. Some of the universities have changed to Division I, but Division II very much a part of the history of football in this particular area. Now, tell me, thinking back on your time at Stillman, were there any real highlights or things that you accomplished or did that stand out?
Yes, sir. I actually had was all conference at receiver at Stillman. I also was all conference as a returner as well, and I also played basketball as well. And I was actually all conference there too.
Well, that's the thing about it. How tall are you?
I'm 6'3".
6'3". Okay. Would you play a 2? In basketball?
I played the 1 and the 2.
Oh, you did? Oh.
Yes, sir.
So evidently you have a fairly good vertical jump.
Yeah, I can do a little jumping, and I can score the basketball very well.
Well, that's why they played you down low like that, I'm sure. So
yes, sir.
After you got out of college, when did you graduate, or when did you get out of college? Was it just last year?
No, I actually graduated in 2013, the year I came out. I didn't originally go in there well once I came out,
okay.
But in 2014, I got an opportunity with Calgary Stampeders in the CFL.
Oh, you did? Okay, I didn't realize that. Tell us about the time up in the Canadian Football League.
It was very interesting. It's different, especially their money, the currency is very transparent. You actually can see through the money, but they treat the players very well up there. The fans are very very compatible with the players as well. They show a lot of love. Just like coming to Sioux Falls, I can tell that the fans, they love their players here as well.
Talking with Storm wide receiver Damian Ford. So then you had some time at the Canadian Football League. How did you wind up with the Sioux Falls Storm?
Well, I ended up getting a phone call from Coach Riggs in September, and I don't know how he found me. I forgot what he told me, how he found me, but I was glad he did, and because it brought me here. So just to have somebody still interested and have you want to be a part of the team and help them win is always a good thing.
So playing indoor football, this is the first time that you've played inside the walls.
Actually, this is my second year. I actually played last year with the Bismarck Bucks in the CIF. I played 2 games with them.
Oh,
and
okay.
This is my 6th game total inside the walls.
Well, it's different. What have you learned since that very first game to where you are right now as far as how to play inside the walls?
You have to be very patient. And I don't mean that as far as taking your time, but everything happens so quick. You have to let things develop because of you. By the field being so small, you don't have much as room as the outdoor game. You have to let people get to their spots first before you make your move.
Well, especially coming from the Canadian football field that is so big.
Right.
And it's
so
like
big. You got a lot of room to work with.
Yeah, it's like going from legal size paper down to the postage stamp.
Exactly.
Now, being a wide receiver, what's more satisfying for you? A great route, a great catch, or a great fake and a block?
All of them.
All of them?
All of them. For you to be a great wide receiver, you want to be able to do all those things because that's what separates you. And the type of athlete and the person I am and the competitor that I am, I don't ever want to see myself as being average, as just being able to do one thing. I don't want to ever see myself as being okay just to block, because now I'm not able to help my team as far as catching the football and getting open. And I also don't want to just be the only person that can just run routes and get open. Now, when the team needs to block on this 4th and 1 or whatever that we need to do to get done, I can't get it done.
Well, I tell you what, that was a great answer, Damien. I really appreciate what you're doing with the Sioux Falls Storm, and my very best to you as you continue your career here in Sioux Falls, and we'll see you on the bus a week from now.
Yes, sir. I really appreciate it.
Very good. Damien Ford, wide receiver with the Sioux Falls Storm. This segment brought to you by Lewis Pharmacies. Get in, get out, feel better. Third call, 336-1230. 4 free tickets to that game with the Iowa Barnstormers on Friday, June 8th. Coming up next, Brian Hermanson, defensive coordinator. We will be back right after this.
The Sheraton Sioux.
Hey guys, Bellator lightweight champion Michael Chandler here. I'm here at one of my favorite places in the entire world, the wrestling room. But if there's one thing we know about wrestling rooms, they can get extremely dirty. We're talking skin infections, we're talking about funk, we're talking about smelly armpits, we're talking about all kinds of stuff. So, my friends at Pure and Clean Sports came up with an awesome solution. Spray it right on your skin, wipe it off, smells great, keeps you clean from the time you leave the mats to the time you can get home and shower. Not only is it the greatest skin defense in the entire world, it's the safest. Check them out, pureandcleansports.com.
You're listening to The Kurtiss Riggs Show, brought to you by Sioux Falls Specialty Hospital and by Orthopedic Institute on 98.1, 1230 Sports Radio, KWSN. Back to the show. Here's Rich Roste.
And this segment of The Kurtiss Riggs Show is the Storm Ticket Giveaway, brought to you by Lewis Pharmacies. Get in, get out, feel better. And after the interview, we'll take your third call at 336-1230. 4 free tickets to the next Storm home game. That's Friday, June 8th, when the Storm hosts the Iowa Barnstormers. And joining us, he is the defensive coordinator with the Sioux Falls Storm, Brian Hermanson. Hermie, how are you doing today?
I'm doing good, Rich. How about yourself?
How long have you been with the Storm?
Well, it was 2 different times. The first time I went, it was about 2.5 years, and then I took that head job at Washington and stepped away. And then I came back in 2014, so 5 years this time, so about 8 years together.
Oh my goodness. Over the course of the time that you've been coaching of indoor football, and things always change and evolve, how much changing have you done to your defensive playbook as you've learned and grown within the indoor football game?
We've added a few coverages over the past, and then there was a couple things that we didn't really necessarily like as much, so we took those out. The thing that we've kind of done now over the past couple of years is we've kind of adapted our coverages to the type of athletes we've had. So, we have them in the back of our mind if we need to use them. And we just kind of take, maybe 12 to 14 different coverages and put them in with the type of athletes we have that fit it best.
Now, when you think about this year, has this been one of your most challenging years because of the change of personnel, especially defensively with the Storm?
It's, right now we have a really good mix of guys. I mean, all the coaches are pretty happy with what we have. The tough thing is it's, guys coming from the outdoor league or from a different organization is kind of understanding our defense. We're not necessarily a man team. We call ours a match and latch, where we zone the first threat, basically, and then it becomes a man principle after that. And that's probably the toughest thing for for the secondary to learn, and the linebacker has to know what part of the field we're giving up, and that's kind of where he drops to.
Mm-hmm. Well, when you talk about these changes, when you're working with a new player, what is more difficult or what takes longer, teaching new defensive terminology or correcting their previous bad habits?
It would probably be the toughest thing for them is adjusting to the way that we play it. Everybody has a different system that they play. There's a lot of similarities with all when you watch other teams in the IFL on how they try to play coverages, but understanding what we're giving up is probably the toughest thing for them. Like maybe a 5-yard out, understanding that we're going to give that pass up, and we'll just rally to it. Everybody, when they first come in, they're like, "Well, he's wide open, coach. We don't have anybody there." But you have to understand that you basically have 4 DBs for their 4 receivers, and then you have to account for the quarterback with the Bucks. So if you blitz, you have to understand where your weakness is going to be, and then just rally to it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's probably the toughest thing for those guys to adjust to. The majority of the league basically plays all straight man, so you're assigned to this guy. And like I said, we try to steal the first threat or the first read of the quarterback by dropping more of a zone principle, and then matching who's there and taking that guy man to man, and from there on out.
I tell you what, talking to you, Hermie, it's so great because you have such a tremendous football mind, defensively especially, and these guys come in and they just follow you because of your energy and your enthusiasm and your passion for the game of football, and I can just see that on the field all the time. One final question for you, Brian Hermanson. When you have a player comes in, what's more important to you, his football intelligence or his athletic ability?
Football intelligence. We've had in years past, we don't necessarily always have the best athletes, but we take pride, especially on the defensive side, and I know Kurtiss does too, that we're not going to get outplayed by you. We're going to, like you said, we're going to play with a lot of emotion. We're going to get to the football, and we're just going to hustle all the time. And when you do that, you can win with players that aren't maybe necessarily all IFL type players.
Mm-hmm.
And then they find out that if they do follow the scheme, they'll be rewarded. And we've had our share of first and second team all IFL guys, and we've had guys that haven't made things that have had outstanding years. You take a guy like Jermaine Robinson, who's got an opportunity to play in the CFL right now, signed a 2-year contract. He came back last year, and he kind of was stuck in a reserve role. Came back this year and was playing pretty well. The CFL gave him a tryout, and they liked what they saw. And so, he's a prime example of a guy that will never be outworked. And that's kind of our motto is no one will outwork us, and, no one will out-hustle us.
Well, Coach, thank you so much for your time today for being on the Kurtiss Riggs Show.
Well, I appreciate it, Rich, and I appreciate everything you do for the Storm and the things that, the road trips. And I know it's a lot of work for you and everything, but kind of like you and I, us old guys, we have a lot of fun on that bus and a lot of fun still being able to be part of it.
And that is exactly right. Just to be a part of it, that's a hoot and a half.
Yes, it is.
Hermie, thanks a lot. Appreciate you being on the show.
Thanks, Rich. Appreciate you.
Thank you so much. Brian Hermanson, defensive coordinator for the Sioux Falls Storm. When we come back, we'll have the head coach. We'll be talking about some things about the last part of the season, but we'll take your third call, 336-1230. Lewis Pharmacies. Get in, get out, feel better. Back right after this.
I'm Bill Ladwick, Director of...
You're listening to the Kurtiss Riggs Show, brought to you by Sioux Falls Specialty Hospital and by Orthopedic Institute on 98.1, 1230, Sports Radio, KWSN. Back to the show. Here's Rich Roste.
And this segment brought to you by Good Sense Deli Fresh Subs. And I tell you what, they're so good. 917 South Cliff Avenue in Sioux Falls. And they're sliced fresh, baked fresh, made fresh. Come see what fresh really is. Good Sense Deli Fresh Subs. And he is the head coach of the Sioux Falls Storm, Kurtiss Riggs. Coach, when I talked earlier about formulating your last 3 games, it wasn't basically what maybe a lot of folks were thinking about because of your, as far as, having a game plan for each one, because you take each game independently. I'm talking about the thing with your team as far as these last 3 weeks, as far as availability of other players? What is your deadline for making trades and also acquisitions and things like that? Just give me some of your mindset as far as any thoughts regarding the last 3 games, last part of the season, as far as personnel.
Well, I mean, it's a really good question. The trade deadline expired May 15th, so that's passed, so we wouldn't be able to trade for any players.
Okay.
But the acquisition time goes till June 19th. So, I mean, really you have right up until the end of the season, until that Thursday before your first playoff game, to acquire players, which, you know, I mean, you could really totally retool going into the playoffs. But, you know, I look at this week really important for us, looking at some players, you know, and seeing if there's changes we can make to improve this team. And it doesn't necessarily mean improve it athletically, but what about improving it just to become a better team? And that's something that we're looking at. Where can we improve? Where can we get better? Where can we not mess up continuity that I think we're getting better at? You know, I think our defensive backs are really starting to play well together. I think our corners, Damon Smith and Lorenzo White, are doing a nice job. You know, and how do we bring someone in and not disrupt things is what we have to look at. And that's what we'll try to do. I think the bye week works out well for us. And then you have to be careful during those last 3 weeks. You know, you have opportunity to do it, but, you know, you don't want to do very much of it.
You know, when you look at a player and you can get their tape and all that kind of stuff, is it a prerequisite for you that they have played indoor football, or is that not important?
Well, you like it. Yeah, it definitely helps, but it's not a prerequisite.
Okay.
You know, I think it does, especially this time of year, it does help, but it's not always brought to the forefront. It's not always, the opportunity is not always there. And so some guys, you have to take them when you can get them.
Okay.
And that's what we look at is, you know, this is an opportunity to finally get this guy in. Let's take advantage of it and see if he can help us.
You know, coaches are like other people in the organized thing. You have basically a folder set up somewhere of people that you've looked at, you've talked about, you've thought about, and you have kind of a wish list. You have a list that says no way, and there's some people in between. And what's more important, bottom line, football intelligence or athleticism?
Oof, that's a good one, Rich. You know, I think in the indoor game, football intelligence first is because how fast will they grasp the indoor game? And if they have a good football IQ, like Damian Ford has a very good football IQ. And, you know, he picked up things very quickly, allowing him to come in, suit right away, and now take over a starting spot. So I think that does. But don't get me wrong, there's been times where they're so athletic that their athleticism will trump a lot of the mistakes they might make, you know, because of a lack of football intelligence.
Well, Coach, always great talking to you, and enjoy the time off. And I'll be interested to talk to you next Tuesday. The Curtis Riggs Show is going to be on Tuesday because of Memorial Day, and to talk about the Green Bay Blizzard coming up the following Friday.
Well, I look forward to that, Rich. Thank you.
Head coach Curtis Riggs, and this segment brought to you by Good Sense Deli Fresh Subs. We'll take this to break. If we don't have enough time at the end, we'll go right to commercial and finish things up. But thanks for listening to the Curtis Riggs Show. And after we go off the air, 4 free tickets, 336-1230, courtesy of Lewis Pharmacies. We'll be back if there's time.
Fans, join the storm for special.
Waiting to see a doctor?
What's taking so long?
It can take a while.
I don't have time for this.
Or longer than a while.
We've been here 2 hours.
Forever.
Hello?
What would you say if there was another option?
Finally.
Yes.
It's about time.
We're inclined to agree. It's about time for the best patient care. Sioux Falls Urgent Care.
Breathe easier when you have your ducts cleaned by Waterbury. Call us today.
Listening to the Curtis Riggs Show. If you've missed it or want to see an old one, courtesy of Boyer Ford Trucks, just go to the Storm website. And Boyer Ford Trucks, celebrating 30 years of being employee-owned sales, parts, service, keep you moving. Thank you to our guests, Damian Ford, Brian Hermanson, the head coach, Curtis Riggs. When we go off the air, we'll take your third caller. Thanks for listening to the Curtis Riggs Show right here on FM 98.1, AM 1230, Sports Radio, KWSN.